In the American Southwest, there's a gallery of ancient art that astonishes everyone who sees it. Stretching for nearly a mile along a sandstone cliff band, this site contains hundreds, if not thousands, of centuries-old images. But it's not the number of images that makes this site remarkable. It's what these images allegedly depict. Contained amongst dozens of life-size figures and objects are depictions of violence and possibly even cannibalism. And that is what makes this place shocking to many. To my knowledge, there's no other place like it in the United States. Knowledge of this site has fascinated me for years, but I've never been able to see it in person. Recently, however, the time was right, and I made the trip to explore what this ancient art might teach us about pre-Columbian North America, and to examine the allegations of violence and cannibalism firsthand. This is my journey to observe these rare and perplexing images. Hey everyone, it's Andrew from Desert Drifter. Thanks for tuning in. So the site today sits on private property, and so because of that, you might notice it's a little more developed than places I normally go. I think the uniqueness of the site will outweigh any of the adverse effects from road noise and other things that you're gonna get not being out in the backcountry. It's a beautiful early fall day here. I mean, there's some pretty intriguing images here, maybe we'll say. Okay, I'm coming to the first set there, somewhere along this cliff band here. Oh, and there's definitely some up there. The lighting is pretty harsh on it. Let's see, there's probably a trail somewhere around up here. I headed up the cliff and immediately started seeing petroglyphs. As I was going to learn today, this was an incredibly unique, open-air, ancient gallery. An outdoor museum, if you will. But unlike a museum, where artifacts have been taken out of their original context and placed in a sterile environment, the rock art here is exactly where its creators left it. It makes visiting rock art more of an experience rather than something that you merely look at. As I continued moving down the cliff, the images became more elaborate. I found myself pondering the astronomical connections some of them could have. Everything we're going to see today is attributed to the Fremont people, a cultural group generally said to exist for about 1,000 years, or from 300 to 1300 AD. Their range was mostly in present-day Utah. I encourage you to do further reading about the Fremont, but I'll highlight a few things I find particularly interesting about them. First, they lived between two worlds. The people to their south were firmly agricultural societies, while those to their north, east, and west were purely nomadic hunter-gatherers. The Fremont farmed, but supplemented their existence with hunting and gathering. I can imagine them observing the lifestyles of the tribal groups around them, and picking and choosing what seemed best or most practical as they straddled two worlds. Second, the Fremont seemed to have an eye for the artistic, We're going to see dramatic examples of that today, but that's not the only part of the story. Incredibly rare and fragile clay figurines have been found at some Fremont sites. The figurines are intricate in of themselves, but they also seem to show examples of ornate clothing that the Fremont must have worn. The final thing I'll highlight that I find very intriguing about the Fremont is that they disappear off the archaeological record around 1300 AD. This coincides with the same time period that dramatic things were happening further south. First, as people retreated into the cliffs, and then they abandoned the area altogether. It seems that the Fremont were not immune to whatever external circumstances were troubling the ancestral Pueblo groups further south. So what happened to thousands of Fremont people? Nobody really knows. Did they migrate out of the region? Were they assimilated into new tribes that moved into the area? Or did significant numbers die off because of drought or warfare? There's been no definitive evidence found that answers the question of what happened to them. Although we don't understand their fate, we can see evidence of their passing in front of us today. One of the questions I often find myself asking when I come to a big petroglyph panel or pictograph panel is why. Not so much why did they make them, but why here? Why this location? And that's definitely a question I have today when I just see how much is here. There it is. It's known as the Three Kings. It's way high up there. I did not expect that. It's interesting that one of the most elaborate panels is probably the hardest to reach. It's pretty wild. That's not easy to get to. It's interesting how it's separate from everything else. It sits out here by itself. Good thing I brought the high zoom lens. The best way to see this is probably via picture. Oh wow, this is really neat here. Huh. P57, I'm sure some archaeological study marking at some point in time. Wow. Not to mention the sandstone here is just gorgeous. Oh, here's another really neat figure over here. Also marked. Huh. Got like starbursts in his hands. Almost missed this little guy down here. Time has reclaimed this panel. All that's left are his two little points, whatever they are. Just to give you guys an idea of scale, and this figure is probably 3.5 feet. I love how his sort of neck adornment has been like scraped and smoothed out. That's one of the more impressive things I've seen all day. Wow. So this next set of petroglyphs we're going to sits along this base here. But as you can see, I mean, is there anything that sets this site apart from the others? I mean, clearly to the original people, yes, but to my eye, no. I mean, there are big fields here today. I'm sure the Fremont people were farming this area as well because they were farmers. You know, you got a water source down there. But of course the question always is, you know, why? Why here? And what purpose and power perhaps did they convey and serve to those who made them? Now we're heading up to the second big section. Oh. Wow. Look at those. And they are huge. I've truly never seen petroglyphs this big. I mean, that thing is probably 6 feet tall, maybe 7. These ones over here aren't as tall. Well, actually take that back. When you look at this guy's headdress, that makes him probably pushing again 7 feet. Huh. So wow. I wish the sun wasn't so harsh on this one because he's huge. Honestly, it kind of reminds me of the depictions of the Egyptian pharaohs. It's hard to accurately show the scale of these figures. They were huge. By far the largest petroglyphs I've ever seen. And as I was about to learn, things were going to get very interesting once I turned the corner. Wow. And it just goes on and on. So much to take in with this strange little figure here. Wow. More severed heads. This is definitely a very intimidating looking warrior. Huh. As many have observed before me, it's pretty hard to ignore the severed heads in these images. Seeing it in person, I was actually surprised at how many there were, dangling from strings or the hands of victorious warriors. For those who would like to explain them away as something different, good luck. It seems like a tough task to me. To flash back, if you were looking closely, you would have also seen one hanging from the Three Kings panel. To my knowledge, there are no other panels of ancient rock art in the United States that depict such a thing. So what do we make of this? Were the Fremont people savage barbarians? Well, if they were no more so than the Greeks, the Romans, the crusading Europeans, the Mongols, the Ottomans, the Arabs, or virtually every other society at some point in time. Violence, warfare, atrocities were no doubt in ancient North America. They were here because people were here. In my opinion, the Fremont were no different than any other people, past, present, and future. They would have been capable of great good and great evil. Oh wow, that's really neat. Up here, pretty high, looks like a bear and a warrior maybe fighting it or killing it. I mean, think of all the work that went into just one of these figures. And there's literally dozens of them here. I think that's one of the things that stands out the most to me at this site is just how intricate and elaborate each of these designs are. So just an observation, pretty much this entire cliff band, and so therefore all the rock art, it all faces westward. Whether or not there's any symbolism to that or significance, I don't know, but just something I was thinking about as I was baking in this afternoon sun. Ah yes, the famed cannibalism panel. Interesting.
So the reason I say that is some people claim that the fact that this is, legs and feet and a head and the rest of the body is missing, that's evidence of cannibalistic practices here. I have to admit, when I've seen this photo in the past, I've thought, well, yeah, maybe. But now that I see it up close, the thing that everybody seems to leave out is there's a face and a headdress up here. So to me, it looks a lot like maybe an abstract representation of one of the other figures we were just looking at. A warrior who's carrying one of the heads of his enemies. But of course, it's open to interpretation. What do you guys think? To put it in context, because context is usually important when we're trying to interpret a book or a picture or something. This is what's over here. Hard to determine exactly what it is.
Unintentionally, I saved the most controversial petroglyph for my last stop. This is a can of worms I don't know that I want to fully open for this video, but of course, I did bring it up. I'm familiar with the evidence of cannibalistic practices in the prehistoric Southwest that have been found. If you want to take a deep dive into it, you can start with Christy Turner's heavily researched book, Mancorn. Most of the evidence he cites has been found outside of the Fremont world, although it does coincide with the Fremont time period. For this video, I did further research to see if anything has been found that connects the Fremont to cannibalism. There is. I found an academic article, which I'll show the title to here, that does claim there have been 3 Fremont sites in Utah that have signs that would point towards, well, There are always varying opinions, but there is at least some foundation to the allegation that this petroglyph depicts a cannibalistic act. I think seeing it in person leads me to believe it's an unfinished, headhunter-style petroglyph, but of course, that's just my opinion. Were some Fremont people cannibals? Maybe. If so, they would join the ranks of many others, including some of the earliest settlers of our country. Not to make light of it, but it's commonly accepted now that the Jamestown settlers resorted to eating each other to survive their first winter. It's an uncomfortable topic, as it should be, but history is history, and the truth deserves to be told. It's always important to consider the big picture, and this is no different.
Well, it's another fascinating place, isn't it? Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for coming along on this little bit different journey than normal. I got to get home. Like I said, I was coming back from a long 8-9 day stretch filming, so Evelyn is expecting me. Take care, guys. Thanks again for watching. I'll catch you next time.